Hi, I'm Chad Walquist. I'm an architect at Palantir. Today, we've got Zoe from Ziggis, and thanks for joining me, Zoe.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Ziggis, okay, first, am I saying that right? And what do you guys do?
Ever thought Palantir was just for giants? This startup proves otherwise. Check this video out.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely saying that right. It is Ziggis. We are a startup, so we're fairly young. We are a bit less than a year old at this point, and we work in the cybersecurity and data space predominantly. So we currently see one big problem in the whole security world, which is that data is very, very large, very, very complex, and it leads to two major issues. From our point, we have a lot of data sources that are very small, very big, but they're just many. And for any person, that's a lot to keep in your head. And if you want to work with it, it's really tricky to do. At the same time, it's also a lot of data. So it's really, really expensive. And companies are struggling to basically pay their way into security. And we're tackling both.
So I guess how did you kind of find Palantir and join the Palantir for Builders program?
So for us, this is very much a security problem where you need to know what you actually have so you can protect it. And that means that ideally you have a lot of data sources flowing into that. And the more nowadays you have SaaS assets that frankly are part of your security perimeter, the more you need to know, and the less it is enough to just look at your pure network and show what's going on there and determine based on that what your inventory is. So we turned and looked in the market and we said like, hey, listen, this is a really well suited to work with ERP systems, to work with what does the company have, how is their financial planning working, how is their internal organization utilization working. But the problem is, turns out then, like, ERP systems are really, really, really complex and they're really tricky to deal with them. I've yet to
Yep.
find an engineer that actually enjoyed that. So what we learned though is that Palantir is actually really, really good at doing that. Like, really good at getting the important pieces of a business together in the form of data and automating that in their platform. And frankly, originally, we did not think that that would be an option. Working with Palantir was not really something I think that most startups have on their
Yep.
agenda. And what we found was that Palantir is actually a shockingly good tool nowadays, even if you're like not a Fortune 500, even if you're a startup starting out.
Why do legacy ERP systems still dominate when they're universally hated by engineers? This is exactly where Palantir thrives, turning chaos into clarity. Could it be that platforms like Foundry are finally making enterprise-grade tools usable for companies that actually need them the most?
Cool. Yeah. So you said, the nice statement of Palantir is a shockingly good platform. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, what's your favorite thing that you've kind of learned about Palantir as you start to get into it?
Okay, let me put a bit of context to this because I don't
Yeah.
want this to come off wrong. But right, if you think about Palantir, you think about this like 300 pounds gorilla that you bring in if like there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of regulation, there's like somebody that needs to cut through all of this. And that's what we first thought. But when we actually looked at it, it turned out that the internal tooling is pretty solid. That's, I think, the things that our team, especially internally from the engineering side, enjoyed so much. So we started out using Palantir Foundry, and at the end, it was extremely easy to just get data in, build the connectors, build our own ontology that we needed to abstract something, and even, I think that was the part of the most shocking to us, build a very, very rapidly prototyping a front end in Palantir with a bunch of additional functionality from the classic data engineering work down to like AI magic sprinkled on top of it. It was extremely easy to do all of this. The developer experience was actually really, really stellar. And I think nobody expected that coming in.
The fact that engineering teams are surprised by how seamless Foundry is says a lot about the myths surrounding Palantir. What's being described here isn't a legacy tool. It's a modern developer-first platform that just happens to carry enterprise-grade power.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely was that kind of preconceived notion that it's a black box for the largest companies in the world. But I think in the last year and a half, with our dev tier, our Palantir for Builders program, I think a lot more people have access. Like, oh wait, I can go get a stack in 5 minutes for free. Like, that's pretty cool. So you mentioned ontology as well. I love asking everybody because it's the term that gets thrown around. Very few people actually know what it means. It's kind of memeable in some sense. So like what would be your take on the value of the ontology for you guys?
I think for us it was very easy to see because we've been dealing a lot with the semantics of data in general. So getting away from what is just producing data to what do you actually want to do with your data? What's the things, the value it adds? And we figured the ontology is actually very close to that as well. So what it allows for us is to clearly define the data assets, to really have this like object that is almost physical in representation that you can think of, and
Yep.
then how you transition from A to B, how things link together, and like giving you that into a very visualized way, which made it frankly digestible for people that are not like the hardcore data scientists and that look in everything in tabular form. So yeah, it allowed us a lot to show this to people and gauge the market a little bit. For us as a startup, at the end of the day, it's about speed. I need to get something out there, right? And it needs to be very quickly evaluated. Is that what the market wants and needs? And then I need to divert, go somewhere else. And that's, especially in the beginning, early days of a startup, that's key.
Yeah.
And having the ontology and especially the tooling around it made it really easy to iterate and also get that in front of people and then make it live real quick, see how the exposure is going, how the customers feel about it, reiterate again. It just gives you a very, very solid foundation, and you could feel that this was not just a whim. This is not just some like YOLO software that somebody has thrown together over the last like 5 months. Yeah.
This breakdown nails it. Ontology becomes the lens through which data gains meaning. It's not just a technical layer, it's how teams start speaking a shared language around data. And for startups, where iteration speed is everything, that kind of clarity isn't just helpful, it's a competitive advantage. Foundry isn't just offering raw power, it's giving teams the structure and flexibility they need to move with confidence, validate quickly, and pivot fast when needed. That's the difference between guessing and building with intent.
Yeah. Very cool. So I guess a question for you is, do we have something that you would be able to show us of like what you've built and maybe a little bit of the architecture?
Yeah, I would like to show you a few things and also like reiterate like some of my points with all of that, because I feel like that was the part that actually was frankly most valuable for us, was not just the product itself but the building process. So we've been invited to Palantir's dev camp last year. It was a great experience, and it was the first like really like hands-on hardcore building experience on Palantir for our engineers. And what this led to was basically we had 3 days to get something really cool going. And we started out actually with doing a planning session. And one of the things that we actually found extremely helpful and it was really fun for us was that, hey, planning in Palantir actually worked really nicely. So we sat down with some of the engineers and actually went over like what steps to take and how we want to get to there. So designing our ingestion pipelines, our ontology, and working through all of this was a really good experience, really great experience that was, I think, more well-rounded than we expected. We
Yeah.
didn't expect Palantir to be able to do a lot of those things. And yeah, at the end of the day, like I said before already, like speed is king. So within 3 days, we actually managed to create a device tracker for our inventory and tying that back together with ERP systems. And that was something that like worked really, really well and was really good for us. So right now you can see what we have here is basically a dashboard that's completely running in Palantir's Foundry. So there's nothing here that is not built with the solution. So this was a really, really big thing for us because this allowed us now to see what's actually important. So what's the business outcome that I want to work towards? So I have a really good representation of the assets that I hold, where they are. I can work out the data that needs to flow and transform in the backend to make all of this happen. And actually like let us build out the business case, which in our thing here, for example, is the work towards really optimizing how you use the assets you already have. And
Oh
because
yeah.
I know from a security angle, right, I know what devices you actually have, where they are, and I also know how much they're used, what they're doing, because that's very important. If I don't know what a device is doing, usually it's really hard to make sure that it's actually doing the right thing, therefore it's secure. But that means there's a lot here that we can do for the normal business side. So in this case, for example, what we can see here is that, let's say we have Shadow IT, we have opportunities to move physical devices from locations where they're underutilized to locations where they are properly utilized because there's a shortage. Again, I know I've talked about this already a lot, but frankly, the dev tooling was really good. So building the pipelines and building the ontologies from how we pull data in from our core systems, which they use a lot of Spark, Databricks, and other cloud services in the backend. How do I get that into the system here, and how do I flow all of that through and actually build things that map back into, for example, the ERP system? It was shockingly easy.
It is really nice, and I'm not gonna lie. Obviously, there's things, especially for us, that we see that need to be a bit better. But that's
Yep.
because our use case is special, where we have petabytes in the very worst cases that come in a day. So we need very specialized processing and crunchiness to get through that and get it to the point where I can really get the valuable insights and data quickly into Palantir here, and then from there on out, it flows really well.
That's awesome.
Too often, companies struggle to link what their tech stack does with what their business actually needs. There's a disconnect between engineering outputs and operational outcomes. But this demo flips that on its head. Foundry helped them visualize shadow IT, resource optimization, and security posture, all from a single unified platform. That's not just visibility, it's actionable intelligence. When your data infrastructure lets you move from insight to execution in real time, that's when technology stops being overhead and starts becoming strategy. This is what it looks like when tooling actually empowers action.
Yeah, I would tell you what, we love the perpetually dissatisfied customers because people like you are the ones that are helping us push the platform that this improves it for everybody. So absolutely love that you're kind of pushing the edges of the different tooling here. That's great.
And yeah, so at the end of the day, for us, this was a case of cool. Like the POC worked really fast. Like it worked surprisingly well. And then the next step obviously was kind of, okay, cool. Like I have those POCs now. Like all the things that we talked about that I showed you before, I have that. But it's still in Palantir. I'm technically speaking not in the business of reselling Palantir.
Yep.
Or am I? So, and this was the fun part for us. And this is a bit of the thing that we really didn't expect either, is just the solution on the back end very scalable. I cannot necessarily sell this because it's not really the thing that is us. So we obviously went on the road, okay, cool, we need our own interface for this. And when we actually had enough prototyping done here and figured out, cool, that is what the market needs, we actually started building more of our own stuff. So as you can see here, this is our current semantic layer, that's our platform, that's our style, that's how our things look, the vibes. And this is the inventory product. So this is our own front end that's built in front of it, but all of this here is still powered by Palantir. So what we're using is the SDK in the backend to actually just access the data, access our ontology, and make the same queries that we did over on the actual Foundry workspace.
I think that's some of the power of the ontology SDK is you get that scalability, you get that security, that you can move fast. And then honestly too, building with the ontology SDK, I find very fun just because I'm if I built that ontology, as you said, to represent the real ground truth, I'm programming with objects that are the ground truth. So even building interfaces like this, I find to be more fun because of that common language of that I'm programming essentially in kind of business language. So how many people, just curious from a size, you're building all this out. This is impressive. How many people do you have working on this?
Oh, so this was actually, again, funnily enough, we had 2 people at the dev camp. So all of the POC work was done within 3 days with 2 engineers and some support from your end,
Yeah.
obviously. Everything down the road was on our side, just one engineer, because the tooling was already there. There was less to do on the actual backend side. Obviously, some of the things we make easier because we can handle the data really, really well, but a lot of the tricky parts that normally need to have a lot of like front and back end people working in tandem and a larger team, we didn't really need, because the dev tooling was there, and a lot of the actual work here we could externalize to, hey, here's the front end that we already built, just translate that into our design language and build it. That's a lot easier to do than starting from scratch.
Here we see the benefit of Palantir's powerful SDK, helping teams quickly move from concept to real-world application with minimal overhead. The real magic lies in how it empowers smaller teams to tackle problems that would traditionally require much larger resources. This approach redefines what's possible for startups and businesses looking to scale efficiently, cutting through complexity without compromising on performance.
That's awesome. Well, Zoe, thanks for the time today. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being with you.